I thought I knew everything about my best friend Jake. We'd been inseparable for 12 years, sharing secrets, dreams, and practically living at each other's houses. He was the most honest person I knew, or so I believed. But last week, I discovered that Jake had been living a complete double life for the past 3 years. What I found out wasn't just shocking, it was so unbelievable that it made me question every single moment of our friendship. The person I thought I knew better than anyone had been lying to my face every single day, and the truth about what he was really doing will blow your mind. If you want to know how well you really know your closest friends, hit that subscribe button because this story will make you question everything. Jake and I met in 4th grade when his family moved to our small town. He was the new kid with thick glasses and a shy smile, getting picked on by the popular kids during his first week. I wasn't exactly Mr. Popular myself, so when I saw him eating lunch alone, I decided to sit with him. That simple act of kindness started what I thought was the most genuine friendship of my life. We clicked immediately. Jake was incredibly smart, the kind of kid who could finish his homework in 10 minutes and then help me with mine for the next hour. He loved video games, comic books, and had this amazing imagination that could turn any boring afternoon into an adventure. While other kids our age were getting into sports or trying to impress girls, Jake and I were building elaborate fantasy worlds and planning what we'd do when we grew up. Throughout middle school and high school, we were practically brothers. Jake's parents worked long hours, so he spent most afternoons at my house. My mom would joke that she should charge his parents rent because he ate dinner with us more often than at his own place. We shared everything: clothes, video games, and most importantly, secrets. At least, I thought we did. Jake was always the responsible one between us. While I got into typical teenage trouble, sneaking out to parties, getting caught with beer, failing tests because I didn't study, Jake was the straight-A student who never seemed to make a wrong move. Teachers loved him, parents trusted him completely, and he had this reputation as the good kid that everyone wished their own children would be like. But looking back now, there were signs I completely missed. Jake always had money for things: new video games, expensive sneakers, the latest tech gadgets, even though his parents weren't particularly wealthy. When I'd ask where he got the cash, he'd always have some explanation: birthday money he'd been saving, payment for tutoring younger kids, or odd jobs around the neighborhood. He was also incredibly secretive about his phone and computer. Jake would literally flip his phone face down whenever I came near, and he had more passwords and security locks than a government agent. I teased him about being paranoid, but he'd just laugh it off and say he valued his privacy. The most obvious red flag was his schedule. Jake would disappear for hours at a time with vague explanations about family stuff or errands for his mom. Sometimes he'd cancel our plans last minute, claiming he'd forgotten about some obligation. For a guy who was supposedly just going to school and hanging out with me, he sure was busy a lot. During our senior year, these mysterious absences became more frequent. Jake would get text messages that would make him immediately tense up, and he'd make excuses to leave wherever we were. When I'd ask what was so urgent, he'd just say it was complicated family drama and change the subject. I trusted him completely, so I never pushed for details. Jake had never lied to me about anything important before, so why would he start now? How naive was I to think I actually knew my best friend? Because what Jake was really doing during those mysterious disappearances was about to shatter everything I believed about him. The first crack in Jake's perfect facade appeared during spring break of our senior year. We were supposed to spend the entire week hanging out, playing the new video game he'd mysteriously been able to afford despite not having a job. But on Tuesday morning, Jake called me with another one of his vague excuses. "I can't hang out today," he said, sounding stressed. "My mom needs me to help with some family stuff." But here's the thing, I had just seen his mom at the grocery store an hour earlier, and she'd mentioned how excited she was that Jake finally had a free week to relax. When I brought this up, Jake stumbled over his words before quickly saying his mom had forgotten to mention the family obligation to me. That afternoon, I decided to surprise him with his favorite pizza, thinking maybe he could take a break from whatever family drama was happening. When I got to his house, his mom answered the door looking confused. "Oh, hi honey," she said. "Are you looking for Jake? He left about 3 hours ago. Said he was going to spend the day with you." My stomach dropped. Jake had lied to both of us, telling me he was busy with family and telling his mom he was with me. I made some excuse about getting my days mixed up, but my mind was racing. Where was Jake, and why did he need to lie about it? I started paying closer attention after that. I noticed that Jake's family emergencies always seemed to happen on weekdays between 2 and 6 p.m. He'd get these specific text messages that would make his entire demeanor change from relaxed and joking to tense and focused. And he'd always leave immediately after getting them, no matter what we were doing. My curiosity turned into full-blown suspicion when I saw Jake's bank statement by accident. He'd left it on my desk when using my computer, and when I glanced at it, I nearly choked. Jake had thousands of dollars in his account, way more money than any teenager should have, especially one who supposedly didn't have a job. When I confronted him about it, Jake got defensive in a way I'd never seen before. "Why are you looking at my personal stuff?" he snapped. "It was an accident, but Jake, where did you get all that money?" "That's like more than my dad makes in 2 months. I've been saving for years," he said, but his voice was shaky. "And I do tutoring jobs you don't know about." "What tutoring jobs?" "You're with me almost every day after school." Jake's face went pale. "Look, can we just drop this? It's really not a big deal." But it was a big deal, and we both knew it. For the first time in our 12-year friendship, I could see that Jake was actively lying to my face, and he wasn't even good at it. That weekend, I made a decision that would change everything between us. I was going to follow Jake during one of his mysterious disappearances and find out what my best friend was really hiding. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely was living a secret life? Because what I was about to uncover would make me question if I ever really knew Jake at all. The following Tuesday, I put my plan into action. I told Jake I was feeling sick and couldn't hang out, then positioned myself across the street from his house with a clear view of his front door. I felt like a stalker, but I had to know what was going on with my best friend. At exactly 2:15 p.m., Jake left his house dressed in clothes I'd never seen before: a nice button-down shirt, dress pants, and shoes that looked expensive. This wasn't the Jake I knew, who lived in hoodies and sneakers. He got into a car I didn't recognize, a sleek black sedan that definitely wasn't his family's beat-up Honda. I followed them in my car, staying far enough back to avoid detection but close enough to see where they were going. To my shock, they didn't head toward any part of town I expected. Instead, they drove to the wealthy part of our city, with huge houses and perfectly manicured lawns. The car stopped in front of a mansion that looked like something out of a movie. Jake got out, walked confidently to the front door, and was led inside by an older woman in what looked like a uniform. He wasn't visiting, he was expected. I sat in my car for 3 hours, watching that house and trying to make sense of what I'd seen. At 5:30 p.m., Jake emerged looking tired but carrying an envelope that he carefully tucked into his jacket pocket. The same black car picked him up and drove him home. That night, I couldn't concentrate on anything. I kept replaying the scene over and over in my mind. Why was Jake visiting a mansion in secret? Who was driving him there? And what was in that envelope? I started investigating online, looking up the address of the house. It belonged to a family called the Hendersons. Richard Henderson was a prominent businessman who owned several companies in our city. But I couldn't find any connection between Jake and this family. The next day at school, Jake acted completely normal, joking around and helping me with homework like nothing had happened. But I kept staring at him, looking for clues about his secret life. How could he be so calm and natural when he was obviously hiding something huge? "You're being weird today," Jake said during lunch. "Are you feeling okay?" "I'm fine," I lied, the irony not lost on me. "Just tired." But I wasn't fine. I was obsessed. Over the next week, I followed Jake 3 more times. Same routine: the fancy clothes, the black car, the mansion, the envelope. Each time, I got more questions and no answers. I even considered confronting him directly, but something held me back. Part of me was afraid that if I pushed too hard, I'd lose my best friend entirely. But a bigger part of me was terrified of what I might discover. The breaking point came when I overheard Jake on a phone call that he thought was private. He was behind the school building, speaking quietly but intensely to someone. "I can't keep doing this much longer," he said. "It's getting harder to make excuses." No, he doesn't suspect anything yet, but he's starting to ask questions. I know what we agreed, but this is my best friend we're talking about. When he saw me approaching, Jake immediately hung up and pretended he'd been talking to his mom about dinner plans. What kind of agreement was Jake talking about? And why did it involve keeping secrets from me? Because I was about to discover that my best friend's double life was more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. I couldn't take it anymore. The lies, the mysterious phone calls, the secret mansion visits, it was eating me alive. I decided to do something that would either give me answers or destroy our friendship completely. I was going to break into that mansion and find out what Jake was really doing there. I know how crazy that sounds, but I was desperate. I'd spent 2 weeks following my best friend around like a private investigator, and I still had no idea what was going on. The not knowing was worse than any truth could be. I waited until Thursday afternoon, when I knew Jake would be at his mysterious appointment. I drove to the wealthy neighborhood and parked a few blocks away from the Henderson mansion. My heart was pounding as I approached the house, looking for any way to get inside or at least peek through a window. The property had high hedges and security cameras, but I managed to find a spot where I could see into what looked like a home office through a gap in the curtains. What I saw inside made my blood run cold. Jake was sitting across from an older man in an expensive suit, presumably Richard Henderson. But this wasn't some casual tutoring session or odd job. Jake had papers spread out in front of him, and he was speaking with the confidence and authority of someone much older. The older man was listening intently and taking notes. On the desk between them, I could see stacks of cash and what looked like legal documents. Jake picked up one of the stacks, counted it quickly, and slipped it into his jacket pocket, the same envelope I'd seen him leave with every time. But the most shocking part was Jake himself. Gone was the shy, awkward teenager I'd known for 12 years. This version of Jake was confident, articulate, and clearly in control of whatever situation was happening in that room. It was like watching a completely different person wearing my best friend's face. I tried to get closer to hear what they were discussing, but that's when disaster struck. I accidentally knocked over a decorative plant while trying to position myself better. The crash was loud enough that both Jake and the older man looked toward the window. I ran. I sprinted back to my car and drove home as fast as I could, my mind racing with questions and fears. What had I just witnessed? Was Jake involved in something illegal? Was he in danger, or was he the danger? That evening, Jake came over to my house like nothing had happened, ready for our usual video game session. But I could barely look at him. Every laugh, every joke, every moment of our normal friendship felt like a performance now. "You're quiet tonight," Jake observed. "Everything okay?" I wanted to scream at him, to demand he tell me the truth about what he was doing at that mansion. Instead, I just nodded and pretended to focus on the game. But Jake wasn't stupid. I could see him studying my face, and I knew my acting wasn't nearly as good as his had been for the past 3 years. "Listen," he said suddenly, pausing the game. "I need to tell you something. Something important." My heart stopped. Was he finally going to confess? Was I about to learn the truth about my best friend's double life? Have you ever been terrified to hear something you've been desperate to know? Because Jake's next words were going to reveal a truth more shocking than anything I could have imagined. Jake turned off the TV and faced me directly, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. "I know you followed me," he said quietly. "I know you were at the Henderson house today." My face must have gone completely white because Jake immediately continued, "Don't panic. I'm not angry. Actually, I'm relieved. I'd been wanting to tell you the truth for months, but I couldn't because of the contract I signed." "What contract?" "Jake, what the hell is going on?" Jake ran his hands through his hair, looking exhausted. "Remember 3 years ago when I suddenly started having money for everything? When I began disappearing for hours at a time with mysterious excuses?" I nodded, my heart pounding. "It started when I was tutoring Mr. Henderson's son, Tommy. He was failing math, and his dad hired me through the school's tutoring program. But after a few sessions, Mr. Henderson pulled me aside and made me an offer that changed everything." "What kind of offer?" "He said he'd been watching me, how I handled complex problems, how I thought through difficult situations. He told me I had a gift for strategy and analysis that most adults don't have." Jake paused, looking directly at me. "He offered me a job as his personal consultant." "A consultant?" "You're 18 years old, Jake." "That's exactly what I said. But Mr. Henderson explained that sometimes you need a perspective that isn't influenced by years of business experience and adult assumptions. He said young people see solutions that adults miss because we don't know what's impossible yet." I stared at him. "What kind of consulting?" "Business strategy, mostly. He'd present me with problems his companies were facing, and I'd spend weeks researching and developing solutions. Market analysis, competitor research, efficiency improvements, stuff like that." Jake's voice got stronger as he continued. "And I was good at it. Really good. My suggestions saved his companies hundreds of thousands of dollars. The money in your bank account. Payment for my consulting work. Mr. Henderson pays me more in a month than most adults make because my ideas actually work." Jake looked almost proud now. "But there was one condition: absolute secrecy. He couldn't have his business competitors or even his own employees knowing that some of his best strategies were coming from a high school kid." I felt like my world was tilting. "So you've been working? Like, actually working as a business consultant?" "For 3 years. The clothes, the car service, the formal meetings, it's all real. Mr. Henderson treats me like a professional because I've proven that I am one." Jake laughed bitterly. "Do you know how hard it's been to pretend I'm just a regular teenager when I'm actually helping run multiple companies? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I signed a non-disclosure agreement that could ruin my entire future if I broke it." "And because—" Jake's voice got quiet. "Because I was scared you'd think I was a freak. What kind of teenager wants to spend his free time analyzing business models instead of going to parties?" The relief in his eyes was overwhelming, but I was still processing everything. My best friend wasn't involved in anything illegal or dangerous, he was just a secret business genius. But if that was true, why did I still feel like there was something he wasn't telling me? What happens when the truth you discover is somehow both better and worse than what you imagined? Because Jake's revelation was just the beginning of understanding who my best friend really was. There's more, isn't there? I said, studying Jake's face. I can tell you're still holding something back. Jake's expression shifted from relief to apprehension. You know me too well, he said softly. Yes, there's more. And this part is going to be harder to understand. He stood up and started pacing my room, clearly struggling with how to continue. The consulting work with Mr. Henderson was just the beginning. Word started spreading quietly, carefully about this anonymous young consultant who was solving impossible problems. Other business owners started reaching out, offering me projects through Mr. Henderson as a middleman. How many other people? 12 regular clients now. I'm essentially running a secret consulting business out of my backpack. Jake laughed, but it sounded hollow. I have clients in 3 different states who have no idea I'm still in high school. They think I'm some young hotshot with an MBA. I was stunned. Jake, that's incredible. You're basically a secret business prodigy. That's the problem, Jake said, sitting back down. It's not just incredible, it's consuming my entire life. Do you want to know what I was really doing during all those times I canceled our plans? I nodded. Working. Always working. While you thought I was dealing with family drama, I was actually in video conferences with executives, analyzing market data, writing reports that would affect hundreds of jobs. Jake's voice cracked slightly. I haven't had a real day off in 2 years. But the money is amazing, but it comes with a price. These people expect professional-level work, delivered on impossible deadlines. I spend every night until 2 a.m. researching industries I know nothing about, learning about markets and competitors and regulations. Jake looked directly at me. I've been getting 4 hours of sleep a night for 3 years while maintaining straight A's and pretending to be a normal teenager. The exhaustion in his voice suddenly made sense. All those times I'd noticed Jake looking tired or stressed, when he'd claimed it was just school pressure, he'd actually been living the workload of a full-time business consultant while still being a high school student. Why didn't you just quit? Because I'm good at it, Jake said simply. Like, scary good. My recommendations have helped companies avoid bankruptcy, increase their profits, expand into new markets. I'm making more money than my parents, and I'm solving problems that adults with decades of experience couldn't figure out. He paused, looking overwhelmed. But I'm also completely isolated. I can't tell anyone about the work I'm proudest of. I can't celebrate my successes or ask for help when I'm struggling. I've been pretending to be someone I'm not for so long that I'm starting to forget who I actually am. And our friendship has been the only real thing in my life for 3 years, Jake said, his eyes filling with tears. Every moment I spent with you was the only time I got to actually be myself instead of playing a role. That's why losing you would have destroyed me. I realized then that my best friend hadn't been living a double life by choice, he'd been trapped in it. But now that the truth was out, what were we going to do about it? How do you help your best friend escape a life that's both a dream come true and a nightmare? Because Jake's secret success was about to become our shared challenge. That conversation changed everything between us, but in the best possible way. Jake and I worked together to help him set boundaries with his consulting work, and I became the only person who knew the truth about his incredible abilities. We developed a system where I'd help him maintain his normal teenager cover while he pursued his passion for business strategy. 2 years later, Jake graduated valedictorian and got into Harvard Business School with a recommendation letter from Mr. Henderson that called him the most gifted strategic mind I've encountered in 30 years of business. He's now studying to become the consultant he'd been pretending to be, but this time without the secrecy. Our friendship survived his double life, but more than that, it became stronger because of it. Sometimes the people closest to us are hiding incredible talents, not terrible secrets. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more true stories. And remember, your friends might be more extraordinary than you realize.